Yeah.
We're going to begin a new Sugyah. This is a wonderful Sugyah because it is very broad and very deep, and it deals with many issues of Kavanah in Tefillah. However, before we begin, there is a public service announcement. And this is a warning, and I mean this in exactly this way. Some of the opinions that will be discussed in the Sugyah do not represent normative Judaism. Meaning, make no mistake, we're going to read some things tonight and maybe even Thursday night that are dead wrong, that cannot be, are absolutely not normative Judaism. It's not within our religion. But we're going to read them anyway, and we're going to see what we see. Fair, but are we all warned this? I made my public service announcement. Do not take the literal meaning of what we're going to read literally, because it ain't so. How do I know it ain't so? I know factually 1,000% it ain't so. So that's my public service warning. Let's begin. So here we have a Rambam in Hilchos Tefillah and Berachos Kohanim Perek Daled. Chamisha Dvarim Ma'akim Tefillah. There are 5 things that Ma'akiv Tefillah, meaning if these 5 things aren't there, you're not Yotzei Tefillah. They're Ma'akiv. Alpha Bishagi is Mana. Even though it's a time for Tefillah, if these 5 criteria are not met, it's Ma'akiv and you're not Yotzei Tefillah. Number 1, Tarash Yadayim. You have to wash your hands. And the Rambam holds the halacha. You have to, meaning even though we say for brachas Stam Yadayim have a chazak and the kiyas, Rambam holds for tefillah you have to actually wash your hands. Now, whether we paskin like this particular Rambam or not is an interesting question, but Lamaisa, it is a very wise idea to make sure that you wash your hands at least with water, if power medium naki, before any tefillah, because Tarash Yadayim, the Rosh Rambam, so it certainly is it's very important to do. The kisi ever, the ever has to be covered. The taras makom tefillah, the place of tefillah has to be tar. Udvar machovsin, certain things that distract you, including needing to go to the bathroom. Ve kavana salev, and kavana, intention, paying attention. Okay, and the Rambam continues. And kavana salev ketzad. What is kavana salev? Called tefillah she'ena bekavana, ena tefillah. Any tefillah. Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped, but that's fine. Called tefillah she'ena bekavana. Called tefillah she'ena bekavana, ena tefillah. Mispala b'lo kavana chozer mispala bekavana. If you daven without kavana, go back and repeat it with kavana. Now, matzah daita mishibet says, if you find yourself also tumult, libo Torah, and your heart is all bothered by things, also the shashiv daito. You're not allowed to daven until you're miyashiv your das. Therefore, if you come from the derech, or you're tired, or you have a lot of tsar, also shashiv daito. You're not allowed to daven until your mind becomes clear, settled. And the Chachamim said, wait 3 days until your mind becomes clear, and afterwards daven. But here's really the point. It's this line in the Rambam that's key and critical. Kol tefillah she'ena bekavana ena tefillah. V'mispal b'kavana chozer u'mispal b'kavana. Gentlemen, what is that saying?
We're all in big trouble.
Any tefillah without kavana is not a tefillah. And if you daven without kavana, you have to go back daven again because you blew it. It's not a tefillah. It's makev. It's done. You blew it. You're done. Okay.
Rebbe, is this an excerpt, or did he jump from discussing?
No, that's
laying out the 5 to the last one.
No, he it's not an excerpt. Meaning, I took it literally from the Rambam. He goes to kavanah salev because that's the main thing he's discussing here. There are many halachas about the other things, but that's not in this place here. Here he discusses kavanah salev. Okay, but again,
we understand, even though he says this, that there's a halacha. And when I saw this halacha years ago, it's like, wow, this is crazy stuff. But like a guy is davening Shmona Esrei, and somehow in the middle of Shmona Esrei, he forgets where he's up to. And he's got to go back to the point where he remembers the bracha that he said, right, and start from there. So what does that mean? It means that he was spaced out, and that's a direct steer to this. Because
Martin, again, let me make my warning. Public service announcement.
Yes.
Some of the opinions we're discussing so you do not represent normative Judaism. Meaning, let's read first, and then we'll ask questions. Okay. But this we're going to take from this Perek Daled of the Rambam. Kol tefillah she'ena bekavana ena tefillah, mispala b'lo kavana chozer mispala b'kavana. If he downs without kavana, he has to daven again because he blew it and it's not a tefillah. Okay, now Ketzadi Kavana. Let's go a little further. Discuss Kavana further. What does it mean? Shivnes libo mikol machshavos, to clear your heart from any thoughts. V'yira atzmo, and see yourself kilu omeid lifnei Shechina, as if you're standing in front of Hashem. Lefika sarach leishiv ma'ikon matfila. Therefore, you have to sit for a moment before davening. Kedei lachamin es libo, in order to put his heart on. V'akach yispalol, and you have to shishdam benachas v'tachnunim, and slowly and with bakashas, with requests. Don't make it feel like someone has a package he's got to get rid of. Let me get rid of this heavy package. Therefore, you have to sit after tefillah a little bit, and then go. I'm sorry to jump. Wow, why does it keep jumping? Chasidim Arishonim used to wait 1 hour kodem tefillah, before davening. 1 hour after davening. And they waited and they were marach b'tefillah shah. By the way, anybody remember the Nefesh HaChaim? Chaim Volozhin asked a very interesting question. This is a Mishnah, right? The Chasidim Rishonim used to wait an hour before davening, and then he would daven an hour. Then they wait an hour after davening. So Frek Rav Chaim Volozhin, the following question. He says, I understand why they took an hour before davening. You have to prepare. I'm just going to double the Shechina, going to talk to. I got it. I understand why they took an hour davening. Listen, there's a lot to ask for, and Hashem has the keys to everything. But why do they need an hour afterwards? What would they need an hour afterwards for? 2 minutes, 5 minutes. What do you need an hour for? You hear the kasha? Gentlemen, anyone know the teretz?
To cool down?
Says Nefesh HaChaim, says Chaim Volozhin, it was so difficult to come back to this world. It was so hard to come back. This pashtus agashmis, the way the Mechaber says it, it's almost they reach a level of nevuah where they took off the heavy cloak of physicality. His pashtus agashmis, like they threw off the physicality. They transcended human experience. They were dovek to the Shechina. They were up in Shemayim, and they were so close to Hashem that it was so difficult to come back to this mundane physical existence that literally it took them an hour to. That's holiness. But okay, anyway, good. Okay, but the point is,
Rabbi,
okay.
I just wanted to just really quickly point out that Aryeh Kaplan has a book on this called Jewish Meditation, if anybody's interested.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you for that public service announcement. I made my own public service announcement. Were you here for that, Jake? One second, Yaakov.
I
Jake,
wasn't here, no, I missed it.
Okay, Yaakov, listen very carefully. Public service announcement. Warning. Some of the opinions that we discuss in the Sugyah do not represent normative Judaism. And by next week, you'll understand what I mean, but I just want to go on record now. I don't want anybody walking into Rosh Hashanah and saying, I'm doomed, I'm dead because I learned the Rav Chaim. It's not pshat. It's wrong, but we're going to see. We're going to go through it step by step. But I want to make sure it's clear. Okay, anyway. So what is Kavana? You see himself as if he's standing in front of the Shechina. Okay, good. Okay, here it is. Kavana Shiva Kol Machshavos. Turn your heart away from any distractions. See yourself as if you're standing in front of the Shechina. Now, just as an observation, there are 3 types of Kavana. Mechavin lasos of mitzvah. Kavana to do a mitzvah. This is not what we're discussing now. Kavana to do a mitzvah. When I pick up a little, I have Kavana for the mitzvah, right? Mechavin shu omei b'tfilah v'nei Hashem. Number 2 is having Kavana that you're talking to God. You're standing in front of Hashem. And number 3 is Mechavin perish milas. Number 3 is Kavana perish milas. So let's go on a little bit more here. Okay. Mishispal of lokines libo. One who davened and didn't have a Kavana. Yachsav yispal b'kavana should go back and daven b'kavana. V'im kivnes libo b'bracha rishona. But if he had kavana during avos, shuv enetzarach, doesn't have to go back. Okay, so and basically, if he's machavin libo b'bracha rishona, the first bracha, and avos shuv enetzarach, then he doesn't have to go back. But if he wasn't machavin at all, then he has to go back. Okay, good. So comes along Reb Chaim Alevi al Rambam and asks a very powerful stira. Let's begin. Hilchos Tefillah, Perek Daled, Halacha Aleph, Halacha, right, Perek Daled. I'm going to read it. Hey, Dvar Makinis Tefillah. Rambam said there are 5 things Makinis Tefillah. Av b'Sugyah zman v'chulu v'kavanah salei v'chulu. Keitzad, what the Rambam say there, and Perek Dalet, kol tefillah. Please stop that. Kol tefillah she'ena b'kavanah. Any tefillah that's not b'kavanah ain't a tefillah. Oh, stop it. I don't know why the mouse is suddenly jumping. I'm not going to touch it. I try to touch this to show you guys the reading part, but anyway, I'm not going to. Kol tefillah she'ena b'kavanah ain't a tefillah. Any tefillah that's not b'kavanah is not a tefillah. Mispalo below kavana, and if you down without kavana, choser mispalo bekavana, go back and down bekavana, and therefore matzah daita mishabes is libo Torah also is palo. If you find your mind is also tumult and your heart is caught in various thoughts, it's also the daven achitashashev daito ad kamashano. That is the Rambam in Perek Dalet. Says Rav Chaim, mistimas loshan Rambam, from the closed wording of the Rambam. Mavur the din kavana who al tefillah. It's clear that the din kavana is on all the davening. Shekola tefillah kavana ma'akeves, but the entire tefillah kavana is ma'akeves. And if you daven without kavana, you're not yotzei, right? So it's very clear, as the Rambam said clearly, kol tefillah she'ena b'kavana tefillah. Mispal lo kavana chos mispal. That's stima solution from the very terse statements over here. It's clear that any tefillah without kavana, you're not yotzei, and it doesn't work. Good. The problem is the kasha. It's a stira. Why? Masha pasuk Rambam Perek Yud. And Perek Yud says the Rambam Shalom Zelashanu. Mishis palav lo kivin it's libo. One who davened and didn't have kavana, yachsav is palav kavana. He should go back and daven kavana. Bim kivin it's libo bracha rishona. But as long as that kavana first bracha, shuvin etzarach, then he doesn't have to. The muvur lehedya. And there it's clearly obvious that kavana ain't ma'akeves rak bracha rishona, and from there it's clear that kavana is not ma'akev. It's only bracha rishona, right? Meaning it's a stira. The Rambam in Perek, actually, let me do it here. The Rambam in Perek Dalet told us kol tefillah she'ein kavana ain't a tefillah. That means any part of tefillah you daven without kavana, it's not a tefillah, and you got to daven again. In Perek Yud, he says in Kivin leave a bracha rishona shuv and etzarach. As long as you have kavana first one, it's okay. Meaning, Perek Dalet seems to say every part of tefillah requires kavana. Perek Yud says only the first bracha needs kavana. That's a stira if I've ever heard a stira. Good? So far, so good, right? Good stira?
Rabbi, doesn't he in Perek Yud, he say the same thing as he says in Perek Dalet, and he follows it up with in Kivain?
No, he does not say
We
that.
just read from Perek Yud, he says...
Oh, you have to have kavana, right? But I mean, lekatchila, yes, lekatchila, because of course you have to have kavana lekatchila. But in kivin liba bracha rishon shuvin etzarach, you don't have to. But here he said kol tefillah she'ein b'kavana ain't a tefillah, and if you daven without kavana, you chozim mispal b'kavana, you have to daven again.
So you can't say that he's saying that means dafka. He's referring to the first bracha.
I mean, kol tefillah, any tefillah she'ein b'kavana, not b'kavana, is not a tefillah.
But in Perek Yud, he seems to say the same thing also.
No, that's lekatchila. In
So
Perek
that
Yud,
means also he's talking lechatchila.
no, but he doesn't say ain't a tefillah. He doesn't say in Perek Yud any kol tefillah she'ein b'kavana ain't a tefillah. This means it's not a prayer, sir. You didn't pray. You didn't write the word. You didn't say anything.
And the Rambam wasn't known to use exaggerated forms for shock value.
Oh yeah, hyperbole. He was trying to sell books, so he called it the 10 really dumb mistakes that very small couples make, right? Yeah, you think so, huh? I don't think so. No. The Rambam was not involved in any of those marketing gimmicks. No, the Rambam sold on content alone. Okay, let's go on. So the nearly Lomar. So says Rav Chaim in answer. I have to say the trei gavne kavana yesh. There are two types of kavana betfila. Okay, two types of kavana tefillah. Ha'achas, the first one is kavana shel perish advarim, meaning what the words mean. Baruch Atashem, blessed be you God. Kavana of what the words mean. Yisodu din kavana, and that's the yisod of a din kavana. And the sheni is the second kavana is not that at all. Second is sheichavin shu omei b'tefillah v'nei Hashem. Second one is I have in mind that I'm standing in front of God. So the first one is what the words mean. Blessed be you God. And the second one is something different altogether. That I'm speaking. I'm standing in front of God. As he clearly indicates in Perek Dalet, Sham Zelashanu. And this is Lashon in Perek Dalet. Maya kavana. In Perek Dalet, he describes what is a kavana shivnes libo mikol machshavos He should clear his mind from any of the distractions and see himself in front of the Shekhinah. So says Rav Chaim, Trey Gavni Kavana, two very different types of Kavana. And one is Kavana Shal Perish Advarim. Simply, what do the words mean? Elokeinu v'Elokei Avosenu, the God and the God of the Father. Okay, Avram, okay, what the words mean? That's one Kavana. Second Kavana is Eino Roas Hatzav Shomi Lefnei Hashem. He doesn't see himself as if he's standing in front of God. All right, so far so good? Good. V'nira the Kavana Zu, Eino Midin Kavana. And this second type of Kavana, this concept of not seeing yourself standing in front of Hashem, is not midin kavana. It's not like a kavana. Just shume etzem ma'aseh tefillah. It's much more basic. It's part of the definition of what tefillah is. If his heart's not clear, if he doesn't see himself that he's standing in front of God and davening, it's not an action of tefillah. And it's misasek. Misasek means it's literally an action without any das. The classic case of misasek is where I didn't even realize what I was doing. I didn't intend it at all. Meaning, let's say I brushed against my shoulder, hit by accident against the wall, and suddenly it turned on the light. And that's misasek. I didn't mean to do it. I didn't think, I was cleaning out I had my shofar, I was cleaning it out, and it made a sound. Oh, I died. It was misasek, and no thought whatsoever to do that. And so if I don't realize I'm standing in front of Hashem, ain's a ma'aseh tefillah very b'chal misasek. It's in the category of misasek. And din ma'aseh, it doesn't have a din ma'aseh. But kema keves kavana zu b'chol tefillah, and therefore this kavana is ma'akev an entire tefillah. D'memokam sheh misasek dino kolos pala klal. In a place where you were misasek, it has a din as if you didn't daven all. V'ki'ilu dalag milos elu, as if you skip those words. If you don't think, you don't recognize you're talking to God, those words weren't said. And certainly in terms of this issue, the etzem tefillah kol yitchas brachos makvos. Obviously, in regard to that, all 18 brachos makiv. But when he's machavin and recognizes what he's doing, he's paying attention. And he knows he's davening. But he doesn't know what the words mean. He thinks Elokei Avram means the God of Yeshua, I don't know, whatever. And he doesn't know what the words mean. Shezed din musuyim rak tefillah levad. That's a din only by tefillah, and that is the one that's only on the first bracha of Avos. All right, so let's put into clear terms what's he saying. Number one, if you don't recognize it, it's talking to God. It's not a ma'aseh tefillah. The kilo dalag milos ela. And it's the entire Shemon Esrei. Anywhere, anyhow, if you don't know, you don't think, you're spaced out, you don't realize you're talking to God, it's not a ma'aseh tefillah, and it's b'chal masasek, it's like you skipped those words. So what's this answer? In Perek Daled, when we said kol tefillah she'eina mekavana eina tefillah, that means literally any part of davening that you did without kavana is not a tefillah. Why? Because you don't see yourself omi l'fnei Hashem. This is the type of kavana he was talking about in Perek Daled, because in fact, that's what the Rambam says. The Rambam says a minute later, Ezut Kavana, that you clear your mind and recognize that you're standing in front of Hashem. This kind of Kavana is ma'akev, totally, completely, any word of Shemona Esrei that you don't say with this Kavana is like you didn't say it, right? If you ain't a Rosh Hashem, you're nothing. Now, this type of Kavana shall perish dvarim, what the words mean, and that's a din mesuyim rak betfilah levad. It's a special din by tefillah, and meaning what? And when in Perek Yud, we said Kiven is libo b'bracha rishona shuv and etzarach, that's talking about this kind of kavana shal pirush dvarim, right? And so there, as long as meaning it's only the first bracha that you have to have this kind of kavana for, and the other brachas, if you didn't know what the words meant, you're fine, as long as you knew you're talking to God. However, this type of kavanah, not realizing you're talking to Hashem, and that's what he's talking about in Perek Daled, any tefillah, she'eina mekavana, any tefillah, any part of Shemona Esrei that you say without recognizing you stand in front of Hashem, you are not yotze and you are toast. Okay? I did these slides like that over. Everybody good so far?
Rebbe, why don't we just? Is there a tzad to just say pashut that? Why
Yeah.
couldn't you just say Dre the Rambam to mean that when it says kol tefillah, it means like any full tefillah, like any full tefillah needs to have kavanah. So Shmona Esrei is if you have kavanah for the first bracha Shmona Esrei, then the mela you had kavanah. It's considered to be having had kavanah for Shmona Esrei.
Do you stand by what you're saying?
I mean, I don't think it's like such a bad reading. I mean, it's probably not right, but it's not. I don't think you could Dre it.
Okay. Can you see my screen now? I don't know if you can see my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Let me go back. 1 second. Where'd it go? I just went away. Go back. 1 second. 1 second. Here we go. 1 second. Wrong. Sanctimony, wrong. Here we go. Here we go. This is a cheat sheet, the rabbi's cheat sheet. Where's the Tosus? Oh, here we go. Ayin Tosus Brochas Lamadal and Beis, who says exactly what Yaakov says. Had so Perik and Brochas Lamadal Beis, Olam Yimno on Daitum Yochel Lecham Yispalol, Vimlav Yispalol, Yesh Lefarish Asum Nami Ba'achas Mehem. That's also talking where you could be mechavin for one of them, meaning the first bracha. Tosas asks this as a stira, basically the Rambam, and the Rambam really quoted 2 Gemaras. Tosas brings those 2 Gemaras as a stira, and he answers exactly what Yaakov's saying. So what can I tell you? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to go back to over here. Wait, did you see what I read? No, you didn't see my screen. Did you?
No, we couldn't see it. No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We only saw Canva.
Oh, okay. Anyway, I am Brachas Daf Lamed Daled Amud Beis Tosus, who says exactly what Yaakov just said. But whatever, I don't know. But right now, Rav Chaim has a stira, and his answer is, Perek Daled is speaking Kol Tefillah She'ein Kavana in a Tefillah, and that's speaking about one kind of Kavana. You don't see yourself talking in front of Hashem. Perish Dvarim, that's a din only by the first bracha. All right. So why you can't answer Stira Rambam the way Tosas does, and Tosas knows how to learn pretty decently. He made it into the Rishon Club, so probably, one that would have a right to say the Rambam likely would agree, but whatever. I don't know the answer to that. Okay, but so far so good. Any other questions? No, good. I have a question.
I have a question.
Yes, Baruch.
If you're concentrating on the words, then you can't be concentrating that I'm talking to Hashem. So how can you be concentrating? I'm talking to Hashem on every single word. Then you're not going to be concentrating on what the words mean.
Right. So the real truth is the Mechaber says the kavanah and davening should be perish milim vehu omei lifnei Hashem. Meaning it's like a back of my mind sort of knowledge. Meaning, watch, if I'm talking to God, I'm saying, blessed be you, God. Obviously, I know God's here. Blessed be you, God, Elokeinu, our God, Elokei Avosenu, God of Avram. I'm talking. So obviously, I'm talking to God. I know He's here.
So you're saying if you're concentrating on the words, then that includes that who I'm talking to.
Automatically, it's
right.
Implicit. It's almost impossible otherwise.
Right, but if you space out on the words, you could be spacing out on both.
Yeah, more likely. If you space out on the word likely, it's almost mukhruk you're spacing out on both, because if God was here and you were talking to him, you wouldn't be spacing out. So right. So bottom line is you space out, it sounds like you wouldn't have both. That's why Rav Chaim is very careful to say that when we say kavanah perish dvar, means you don't know what the words mean. You know that you're talking to God, but you think you're saying manishtana and you're saying okay Avram. But you know what you're talking to God. Okay. Anybody else have any problems with this Rav Chaim?
It seems kind of hard to say to me that if you're not thinking about the fact that you're standing in front of Hashem, that's called misasek. It seems like those are very far apart things, right? Misasek is very extreme, that your mom's like playing a shofar for music and then you try to be yotzei that way. Not that you're not having this amazing high level kavanah.
Okay, Jake, I wasn't as fancy as you, but I asked the question this way. Why? Meaning, here's the rule. I tell you the rule. You don't see yourself from God, and you're misasek. Well, why? Why? Who said why? You don't. Who said that? Whoever heard such a halacha like that? Where did it come from? Right? Meaning, here's the parak dalid. Ein ro'atz omin l'fnei Hashem. It's mamish eina tefillah. And any word you say that way is mamish, not a word of tefillah. You didn't say those words. You dolag milos el, like you skipped those words. Why? Where did that come from? Why do you say such a concept? Okay, so gentlemen, what's the answer to this? This is the first step in Rav Chaim. We have to answer this question. It's very clear that Rav Chaim takes it as a given. I mean, I don't know if it's a given, but he's saying, and this is shot in the Rambam. So why is it that any tefillah, you don't see you're standing in front of Hashem, it's mamish misasek, and it's like you didn't say those words. Okay, so let's begin step one. Let's start with a definition. What is tefillah? Right? Let's ask you a question. What is davening? So I think everyone would say davening. Okay, Avram, okay, Yitzchak, okay, Yaakov, right? Davening. What is davening? Tefillah is talking to God. That is the definition of tefillah. And tefillah isn't lip service. It's not even necessarily heart service, because most of the Seder might be heart service. It's talking to God, communicating with Hashem. I speaking to God, the creator. Now, what if you're Ein ro'atz omin l'fnei Hashem? Okay, so I have a very interesting question to ask you. What if a person, instead of davening to Hashem, what if you daven to a tree? Right? Imagine a person said to a tree, Elokei Avram, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov, you great tree, you're the God, right? Well, what would you say? Is he Yotzi Tefillah?
Idol worship.
Yeah, exactly. He's over Vodazar. He missed the target. That tree is not the God of Avram Yitzchak. Tree is a tree. You're blowing it. You missed the target totally and completely. Because the definition of tefillah is talking to God. And if you talk to a tree, you're talking to a tree, not to God, because tefillah is talking to God. So what happens if you aren't communicating with Hashem? What happens, very simply, you're not davening. It might be voice practice. It might be vocalizations, but you're not davening. Because davening, by definition, is one thing and one thing only, talking to God, communicating with the creator of the heavens and the earth. And if you're not doing that, you're not davening. Just like if you talk to a tree or you daven to a tree, it's not davening, you missed the mark. And so too, if you're not talking to God because you're not communicating with God, because whatever reason you're spaced out, you think about the Mets, the Giants, your stocks, you're not communicating with God. And communicating with God means talking to the creator of the heavens and earth. If you're not doing that, you're not davening. Very simple. Very simple, right?
Still saying the words?
Okay, Avram, okay, it's my stocks are going up. Okay, it's okay, I'll go, my stocks are going down. I better buy this, but it's going to go. I'm going to buy this next week. Well, I'll take it. Right, exactly. I'm saying the words.
You are saying the words.
You're saying the words, but that's not davening. Why? Because the definition of davening is communicating, talking to God. You're not talking to God. You're moving your lips. You're maybe, let's watch this. Let's say I'm doing chazan. I'm doing voice practice. Oh, look at Avram, look at Yisrael, I'm not davening, practicing my chazanas, right? Or let's say I want to work on my diction. I want to make sure I pronounce the words right. Elokei Avraham. Elokei. I'm not davening. I'm working my diction.
Is a person that does Chazar Sashat supposed to have kavanah when he's doing Chazar Sashat?
I think so. Otherwise, he's not davening.
Well, he's certainly saying the words and he's doing them really fast.
Okay, but again, you saw my warning, right?
Yeah. No, despite your warning, I'm asking the question.
The halacha for sure in avos, if the shliach tzibur does not have kavanah in avos, he is not yotzei, whatever his job as shliach tzibur is. So yes, now the halacha happens to be, gentlemen, just for the record, the halacha in Shulchan Aruch is, as long as you have kavanah in the first bracha, you yotzei. If you don't have kavanah in the first bracha, you're not yotzei. The Mechaber says then you go back, and the Ramah says no, don't go back. You're probably not going to have kavanah the second time either, so don't bother going back. But the pashtus is, if you say at least the first bracha without kavanah, you're not yotzei Shmoneh Esrei. Forget the Rambam. The Rambam, the way Rav Chaim says the Rambam, if you space out any part of Shmoneh Esrei, you're not. That happens not to be the halacha. And the halacha is, though, that the first bracha, avos, you better make sure you're paying attention to perish amilim, what the words mean, because otherwise you're not yotze. That one I can't help with, because that is normative halach. That's the halach in Shulchan Aruch. But again, the big chiddush, the way Rav Chaim is learning this Rambam, is that it's every part of tefillah. If you're not talking to God, you're not davening. And if you're spacing out, you're not communicating with God, you're spaced out. Your mouth is moving, you're vocalizing, your lips, but you're not communicating with your Creator. It's not tefillah. So any part of Shemona Esrei, you space out. The simple reading of the Rav Chaim is, any part of Shemona Esrei you space out, toast, dalag milos elu. You skip those words. Okay, so far so bad.
Rav Chaim, you have to not space out, but you don't have to know the translation of the words.
You only have to know the translation of the first bracha.
First bracha, but in the rest of Shemona Esrei, you have to know you're talking to God and where you're talking to God, but you could be talking gibberish.
Correct. But assuming that you are spacing out, you're not talking to God, and any part of the Shemona Esrei that you're not talking to God is not like it's like it wasn't said, in which case you're not Yotzei Shemona Esrei. What percent of the Jewish population will be not Yotzei Shemona Esrei?
Don't be so judgmental.
I don't have to be judgmental. The number is 99.9%. And how do I know that factually to be true? Because Tosfos quotes a Gemara about the fact that we have to thank our knees for waking us up by modim. That's a Gemara. All right, whatever. The Chazon Ish is on my side also. But whatever. We'll see. This is, again, the Jewish nation, a miyuta to miyuta. It means the entire Shemona Esrei, from Baruch Ata till Yi L'Ratzon, no spacing out. I don't know many people alive who on a consistent basis can say that. I don't. And I work on davening for.
Not just no spacing out, Rebbe, isn't it? Also, it says you'd be thinking about the fact you're before Hashem.
Yeah, right. I mean, but the point is, if you're spaced out, you're not thinking about the fact it's before Hashem. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know,
Sure.
So again,
even not spacing out is not enough. You have to be thinking about the fact that you're before Hashem.
right.
It's
All
a
right.
higher level than not spacing out.
Well, no, but the point, if you're down, if you're saying the words "Blessed be you, God," you're talking to God. So obviously, you know God's there. You know, when I say space, I mean if you have Perush Milos, everyone agree. If you're paying attention to what the words mean, according to every shita, you yotze, because you're talking to Hashem. You're Avram Malshin Maltitikva Hashem. Don't give any. You're talking to Hashem. So obviously Hashem's there. The point is, if you space out and I say V'malshinim in my brain somewhere else, those words were like I skipped them and didn't say it. And I would venture to say a very, very high percentage of the Jewish nation will never have been Yotzei Shemona Esrei, and certainly not on a consistent, regular basis. Again, gentlemen, I'm telling you this, an honest admission over here. I work on davening. I value davening. I learn Mussar regularly. And a lot of times I'm in there. A lot of times speaking to Hashem. Many times for a good number of brachas. Certainly I try to get avos. And then somewhere in the middle, I'm just gone. And I pull myself back. And I'll be there for a bracha too, and then I'm gone. Like, so you're telling me I'm never Yotzei Shemona Esrei? I don't believe it. Sorry. But okay, but let's continue. But that's certainly.
But Rebbe, I don't want to get too tangential, and if it's going to get too tangential, then we can do it at a different time. But what does Pirush Hamilim mean? Does it mean like you think like you see the word in front of you, or does it mean like you think about what's going on, like Tika b'shofar, like blowing a shofar? You figure like someone blowing a shofar.
Right. It's not tangential. It's a very important point. And the Nefesh HaChaim in Tefillah gives an eitzah. He says, see the words in your mind and it'll help you have kavanah, but that's not Perush Hamilim. And Perush Hamilim means what the words mean. Tekah b'shofar gadol cheresenu, blow a great shofar for our freedom. That's what the words mean. Tekah, blow, b'shofar, shofar, gadol, great, big, l'cheresenu, to free us. What the words mean. When you say the words, Perush Hamilim means I'm thinking the Perush Hamilim. In fact, Mishmur says, it's very important to know what the words mean, otherwise you're not going to know Perush Hamilim, right? So it's simple. Now again, there are fancier kavanas. The Nefesh HaChaim says it's a good idea to see the words in front of you as you say it. whatever. But that's an extra added bonus. Whatever. It's Perish Hamila means what the words mean. All right, let's continue. So far,
but like seeing a video of what it's, is it like seeing a video in your brain or images in your brain? Like what exactly does it mean?
I'll tell you exactly what it means. Yaakov Goldstein, I am speaking to you. Every word I said, I knew what I meant. Yaakov, your first name, Goldstein, your last name. Me, am speaking to you. That's Perish Hamilim. I know what the words mean. I right? Tekah b'shofar gadol l'cherusenu. Blow a great shofar for our freedom. The sun
really has a mile over us.
To gather. I'm sorry, what?
Israeli has a mile over us because he knows the.
Israelis have a mila and a chasaron. Right. The mila is they know what the words mean. A chasaron, they're so accustomed to the words, it's easier for them to space out. Correct.
Right. That's the kind of issue about Eon with Israelis and Eon.
Right. But it's a mila and a chasaron. But make sure you know what the words mean. If you don't know what the word means, you can't have Perish Hamilim. You have to know what the words mean, and don't rely on the interlinear siddur because it doesn't work. I'm telling you, it's a good thing to learn to use to learn what the words mean, but don't use it during davening. It doesn't work. All right, so far so bad. Yes, good. Let's go on. Now, Sofas din kavana bezeh hu the area sugi the brachas daf lamed dalid. This extra type of kavana, what he calls extra means a perish milim, and that's what the sugi and brachas daf lamed dalid is dealing with. Hamispala shar shekavan liba b'chol brachos. One who davens has to be mechamin his leiv in all brachas. If he can't be mechamin in all the brachas, at least be mechamin in one. Amrav Chia, Amrav Safra, Mishum Chad Debei Rebbe Ba'avos, and this is the maskan of the Gemara. Meaning you should have to be mispala l'katchila, have to have kavanah for all the brachas. But if you can't, at least have kavanah in one. Which one? Avos. And this, he says, is the Perish Hamilim. Asavas din kavanah. This extra din kavanah, this Perish Hamilim, and that's what the Gemara was talking about. Right? So basically, again, Trey Gavni Kavanah, Ein Rosh Hashem, and Kavanah Perish Advarim. The Gemara in Brachos, when it says Im Einu Yachal Chametz Libo B'Chulan Yicham Me'echel Mehem, is not talking about this thing, no, because that forget it. It's makiv on every part of it. It's Kavanah Shal Perish Advarim. That's what the Gemara in Brachos was talking about. Okay, so far so good.
I mean, isn't it a little funny that if you had to pick one of these to say is a brain, is like a mental kavana, and one of them is a libo kavana, which one would you say is which?
I don't know. Not sure.
I would say in row is an idea is a kavana in your heart. It's understanding. It's a certain understanding what you're about to do, and you're it's the avoda aspect of not davening to a tree but davening to Hashem. Kavana shaperish advarim is more of a I'm saying a word, understand the meaning. It's an intellectual thing. That's what I would assume. Reb Chaim seems to teach the Chavinis Libo is an idea of Perish Hamilim, meaning he's saying that when the Rambam says, when he says one time the Chavinis Libo and one time not, that's the one that's Perish Hamilim. It sounds a little funny.
Here on Litzan's point, it's right. He's referring to Kavana of Hashem when he's talking about the Milim.
I don't think it's a good deal. It's a Gemara. It's not the Rambam. It's a Gemara. You can't. This is a Gemara in Daf Lamed Daled. This Gemara is clearly referring to Perish Advarim because we know the halacha is this way, right?
What do you mean? It's clearly when the Rambam says it, we never knew it was talking about Perish Advarim. We would assume it's Kavana is one thing until Reb Chaim makes the chilek, right? Reb Chaim comes to be mechadish this idea.
So I'm not sure. So what do you
Kavana
say?
we thought was Kavana, right? So Reb Chaim's coming to add this new idea. No, really, the Rambam is not a stira. One of them is Kavana Shaperish Advarim. But that's the one time when the Rambam shouldn't be saying is halacha, is the Chavin is libo. Libo has nothing to do with Perish Hamilim.
1 second. In Perik Dal, the Rambam was very clear what Kavana is. That he defined, in Perik Dal, he defined the type of Kavana he's talking about, talking to God. He couldn't have said it more clearly. That's Reb Chaim's diak. And then in Perik Dal, he defined Kavana as talking to God. And in Perik Yud, he didn't define it that way.
So Chaim's not making any chiddush of what kavana is. He's just saying that look, the Rambam says two different types of kavana.
That's it. Rambam's referring to two different types of kavana, and one is not a kavana issue. And it's a din. It's misasek. It's a din and not a ma'aser tefillah. It's not an act of, not a kavana. It's not an act of tefillah. Let's say I didn't say the words of Shemona Esrei.
But that's kavana. He says kavana. No, the word's kavana.
He says it's not kavana. It's not an act of tefillah. Let's say I didn't. Let's say I thought mehara belibo and I didn't say the words. Would you call it an act of tefillah? It's not a tefillah. No. So too, if I wasn't talking, I didn't see myself.
Wait, but if you did shomei kaona, would you call it a tefillah?
I don't know. That's a different sugyah. I don't know. But the point is that he says this is, if I don't realize I'm talking to God, it's not an act of tefillah. It's like you skip those words. It's a lack in a ma'isa of it's not davening. It's something else altogether. It's, well, I don't know what it is, but it's not davening. And again,
I would say if you don't have kavana, that makes sense to say it's not davening, because that is what davening is. Meaning, like Rabbi just said, you could daven to a tree. You're not davening. You're just saying words. But I'm saying, so he's not being mechadish anything. He's just pointing out that the Rambam specified kavana, and he means two different things. There's two different types of kavanas.
Right. Good.
Because the Rebbe's saying that the Rambam said that himself. So it's not we didn't need Rav Chaim. We just should have continued reading the Rambam, and the Rambam would have said, when I said kavana over here in Daled.
No, 1 second. Yaakov said if we didn't have Rav Chaim, we would have said exactly what Yaakov said. Tosas and Dav Lamadal asks the stira and answers when it says, is when it says the expression any tefillah below kavana means anything called a Shemona Esrei without kavana, meaning ba'avos ain't a tefillah. That's how we would have read it. The Rav Chaim is the one who
saying that Rav Chaim is saying don't make Tosas' mistake. Really, there's two different kavanos, right. And that's what the Rambam is coming to say.
Right. And again, it's a mighty. But again, not only is he saying that, he's telling us a chiddush nora v'nifla, that if you don't see yourself in front of Hashem, it's not a ma'isa of tefillah. It's not a lack of kavana. It's not an act of davening. You did something. You didn't do anything. It's a huge chiddush. It's not a lack of kavana. It's not a ma'isa of tefillah. And that's Rav Chaim's huge breakthrough. Whether it's right or not, we're going to have to see. If I don't think I'm talking to God, it's not an act of tefillah. It's not a lack of kavana. It's not a dibur. It's a dibur is communication. I didn't communicate. I moved my lips. I did chazanas practice. I did vocalizations. I did diction practice, but I didn't communicate. The definition if you want to know his chiddush, there's one chiddush. Definition of tefillah is talking to God. And if you're spaced out, you're not talking to God. You're not davening. Finish. It's not a ma'isa tefillah. If you aren't communicating with Hashem, it's not a ma'isa of tefillah. It's whatever. None to talk about. But it's not kavana. It's not a lack of kavana. It's something else altogether. But I got some more slides, so just so we could get this clear. This kavana shel perish advarim is only ma'akev in avos. Now, and this is the halacha. Why is that?
Yeah, I was about to ask you, why is that?
Oh, thank you. Okay, here we go. The three parts of Shemona Esrei: Shevach, Bakasha, and Hodah. And the first three brachos are Shevach. We praise Hashem to sort of recognize Hashem's greatness. And the middle 13 are Bakasha, Hashem, give us what we need. Give us forgiveness, give us da'at, Torah, etc. And the last three, Modim, are Hodah, thanking Hashem for everything we have. 3, 13, and 3. It equals to 18, if you know how to do the math wrong. But okay, one Chazal added. Okay, now, let's look at the first one, Shevach. Shevach part consists of 3 brachos. Brachos Avos, and brachos Gvuros, and Kedusha Hashem. Avos is Magen Avram. Gvuros is Ata Gibor Hashem, Machayim Meisim Atar L'Shia. Kedusha Hashem is Ata Kodesh, Baruch Hashem, Akel HaKadosh. Okay, now, so these 3 brachas are they're like Akdama to Tefillah. They get me prepared, to get me ready. Now, here's how it works. And the Mishnah Berurah explains, Avos Gvuros part of Kedusha Hashem. Mishnah Berurah explains that this part of us requires kavana because this is the Ika Shevach of Hashem. Very interesting to note that is the Ika Shevach of Hashem. And it's mashma, the way the Mishnah Berurah says it, it's a rabbinic issue. The rabbi said, if you don't have to have kavana at all, you're fine. But we say it's ein roy. If you don't have kavana in avos, that's so bad. We're gonna pass Yishman Esrei. You know what I'm saying? The opposite order of Chaim saying, even if you had not a drop of kavana in the entire Shemona Esrei, you would be yotze. But Chazal said it's not right. Avos, even Avos, that's the highest Shevach to Hashem. That one you don't have kavanah. We're not letting that Shemona Esrei fly. So it seems to be the Pashta's exact opposite of what Rav Chaim, but whatever. But let's again, we're learning Rav Chaim here. Rav Chaim says in Avos, and that's when we say kavanah, that means Perish Amilim. That's what we're talking about. But if you don't know you're standing in front of God, that's ma'akiv any single part. All right, good. So far, so bad?
So far, so bad.
Good. Not so slow. You thought it was 2 dinim in kavana? No. Even as din kavana, there are 2 dinim in it. Chad din kavana shemacham in lasos a mitzvah, meaning the second type, right? One is macham in lasos a mitzvah. One is you have kavana to do mitzvah. Din kavana shall call mitzvahs. And that's the din of kavana of all mitzvahs. The kamal mitzvahs sheikhs kavana. We paskin that mitzvahs require kavana. And that's part ein chilik ben bracha rishon l'shar tefillah. In terms of this one, there's no difference between the first bracha and the rest of davening. Came and do din anoig b'chol mitzvahs. Since it's a din that's noig in all the mitzvahs. Kasher mitzvahs the whole mitzvah kula shricha kavana. The entire mitzvah in its entirety has to be with kavana. Lamahani kavana is miksasa, and if a kavana of a little bit doesn't help. So do I tefillah, the kavana kula sricha kavana. The kavasa, the entire tefillah requires kavana. Okay, anybody know what he's saying?
I'm wondering, how can you break up the mitzvah of saying the Yodches Bracho and just say, well, you were Yotzi this in this one little, it's like, let's say you said, okay, I'm really having kavana on tekiah, but I didn't on shvarim. So, it's like
You're
part
right.
of it.
You're right. His point here is he's dealing with the type of kavana that'll be ma'akev any part of Shemona Esrei and will wipe out any part. Like again, he says if you didn't have kavana, it's like you didn't say those words. But he's saying there are 2 reasons for it. One reason was, again, he said, because if you don't realize you're talking to God, so you're not dominating, because that's the definition of tefillah. He says there's a second reason why if you don't realize you're talking to God, if you space out, and second reason why any bracha in Shemona Esrei, it's like you didn't say it. And what's the second reason? The what?
Because you don't realize you're doing a mitzvah.
And therefore what?
It's a shrichas kavana.
Okay, so let's see what this means.
But don't we have a Chaya Adam that'll make us always be guilty of this because we're standing in shul?
We sure do, and if not for the Chaya Adam, we'd all be toast. Baruch Hashem. But this is Rav Chaim, and we're going to learn again. My warning was before. There's not normative Judaism. We're going to see what the halach is later, but let's take Rav Chaim at what he's saying. Says Rav Chaim, mitzvah shrichas gona. We paskin and mitzvah shrichas gona. The Raman Omer says doesn't need kavanah. We paskin does. What is it? Please go back to that slide that you had a moment ago. Mishabura and Simin Samach. What does it mean? Mitzvah shrichas gona. Sheichavin lekaim bezek kashetziva Hashem. Meaning, when I pick up a lulav, I have to think in my brain, kasher tziva Hashem. I'm picking up this lulav in esrog as God commanded me to. What God told me to do it, I'm doing it. That's kavanah for the mitzvah. When I eat matzah, I'm eating this matzah kasher, like God commanded me to eat this matzah. Do I know the pasuk? Well, I do, whatever. God said to do it, I'm doing it. That's doing the mitzvah kavanah. Okay? Shofar. When I blow the shofar, kasher tziva Hashem, I'm doing it with the kavanah of the mitzvah, like God commanded. Everything's good. What about tefillah? Tefillah, kasher tziva Hashem, as God commanded. So what happens if in the middle of my tefillah, my brain shuts off? I ain't got no brain. I'm not paying attention. What happens is, it's not mitzvah kavanah. I don't have kavanah. So those words are part of the mitzvah. Let's say v'malshim al tikva, al tzaddik, right? And those words, if I don't have kavanah, my brain is off. There's no brain here. I'm not saying to myself, kasher tziva Hashem. It's a mitzvah without kavanah. So a mitzvah without kavanah, you're not yotzei.
Is this why we say hineni muchanim zuman before mitzvahs?
Yes, it's probably one of the reasons. The pashtus, that's a berachos of mitzvahs do. The berachos of mitzvah is supposed to focus you on lishmoa kol show, to put your brain on. But one thing for sure, what Rav Chaim is saying is that any part of Shemona Esrei that you space out, there's a second reason why it's like you didn't say the words. You may have said the words, but you did it without mitzvahs require kavana. You didn't have kavana, so you didn't say it. You didn't do the mitzvah. Your brain is on off. You didn't do mitzvah kavana.
I mean, what is he? Is he trying to bring a raya? What is he doing?
He's saying a second reason why, and the Rambam says if you space out during any part of Shemona Esrei, your whole Shemona Esrei is gone. One reason is because the definition of tefillah is communicating with God, and you weren't communicating with God. Second reason if you space out, you're not yotzei, is because mitzvahs require kavana, and you don't have kavana. If you're spaced out, obviously you don't have kavana to be yotzei kashet tziva Hashem.
Why does he need two reasons? Like, isn't the first reason a good enough reason?
You can't argue with a man if he thinks it's true. He's explaining the Rambam. This is the second reason. The Rambam said apparently any tefillah shelo b'kavana lo is not a tefillah. That's how he said in Perek Dalet. Now, why did the Rambam say that? It says Rav Chaim, two reasons for it. Number one, because the definition of davening is talking to God, communicating. If your brain's not on, you're not communicating. And number two, there's another reason. And we paskin mitzvah shrichus kavana. And if you're spaced out, obviously you're not kashet tziva Hashem, you're not thinking as God commanded. So two reasons why the Rambam Perek Dalet says that any tefillah without kavana is not a tefillah. Not just that you're not yotzei. It's not a tefillah. It doesn't have a din of davening.
Okay, so I'm so focused. I'm mamish standing before Hashem. So I'm so focused. I'm standing before Hashem that I don't think about the fact that this is a mitzvah, but I'm doing something wrong because I'm too focused. I'm thinking before Hashem. I'm not thinking about the fact that it's a mitzvah.
That's a good question.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'll get back to that.
It just doesn't sound like if you're so focused before Hashem, you're not going to be able to focus that you're in a mitzvah. You're diving to Hashem right now. You're standing before Hashem. What more can you ask for me?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm going to get back to a second. Yes, Dov, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just said that's a good question.
Oh, you said that's a good question.
Yes.
Then I have to get back there. Okay. All right. So let's focus. What would be ideal? Ideal would be if I'm saying the words to talking to God. Now, talking to God means I'm doing, I don't have to think, listen, even according to the strongest Rav Chaim man, you don't have to say l'shem mitzitzitz every minute of tying the tzitzits. Meaning the halacha is when you tie the tzitzits, before you tie, you say one time l'shem mitzitzitz, and whatever you started with, that kavana stays with you throughout. You don't have to speak out the kavana, you don't have to repeat it. And whatever kavana you started with remains with you. That's true, Kolzman, that your brain is on. But if your brain is on off, then we can't say it's true anymore. It's not true. Because you don't have kavanah.
So if I start off the Shemona Esrei, Hashem Svasai Tiftach, and I'm thinking about the words, Hashem Svasai Tiftach, I'm coming before you, Hashem, to daven before you, because you told me to come before you and ask for my needs. Please open my mouth and then I just keep on going all the way through, not automatic pilot, but focusing on my tefillah. That wouldn't be a problem according to the.
That'd be perfect Shemona Esrei. Yotzei, you did an act of tefillah, and it was for the shem mitzvahs of tefillah, and everything's great.
The only thing that interrupts it is if we go on brain dead, on spaced out.
Exactly. If the brain disappears, then I can't say I have kavanah for the mitzvah.
So we don't think we're talking to God, and we don't think about the fact that God commanded us to talk to Him.
Right. So
basically, how do we know that what missing out on kavanah on the words automatically takes away the other two?
How do we know that?
If I space out, I'm not thinking about the words.
Right.
Right. So then why does that turn off my starting kavanah that I want to be doing the mitzvah of tefillah, and I'm standing before Hashem, and it's like I'm automatically canceling that because I stopped thinking about the words?
Because I'm not thinking kashet tziva Hashem.
I wasn't expected to keep thinking kasher tziva Hashem, and I was not expected to keep thinking that I'm standing before Hashem. I was expected to keep focused on the words. So I messed that up. I spaced out on the words, and the other two things automatically disappear.
So Baruch, I would like to agree with you, and I probably do, but let's read something together. Interesting over here. Beis Yosef Orach Chaim Tuf Kuf Peites. He said the Beis Yosef, actually here's the longer version of it. No, that's not the longer. We'll do the short version. He said the Beis Yosef says that according to everybody, whether mitzvah shrichus kavana or even ain't a shrichus kavana, by something like a mira, everyone agrees it requires kavana. Why? Sha'amira who believe, because like I said, 85% of a dibur is the das. If you don't have kavana of a mira, nimski mishla also shum dava mea mitzvahs, like you didn't do anything of the mitzvah. Again, this is where the Beis Yosef explains to us why even if you hold kavana, that mitzvahs ain't a shrichus kavana, by something like a mira, even that mandam agrees you have to have kavana. Why? And because a mira without intention is nothing. It's not. You're not doing anything from the mitzvah.
I gotta at least pay attention when I'm saying to the bracha that I'm saying. If I'm saying bracha shaking lulav and esrog, maybe I don't have to have kavana every single moment I'm shaking lulav and esrog. But when I'm saying the bracha, I should be focusing on the bracha.
Yeah, but the bracha is the rabbinic. Well, let's deal with the right. So let's say benching Kriya Shema or Birchas Torah, right? Those three. So now the halacha is mitzvahs. Let's say we paskin mitzvahs ain't a stricha kavana, right? Says the Beis Yosef, even if you paskin mitzvahs ain't a strichas kavana, when something like a mira, you have to have kavana when you do it. Why? Because the whole definition of a mira is intention. All dibur is machshava, is das in concrete form. Dibur is just taking the das and putting it into a different form. But if you want to know what dibur is das. Dibur is das in spoken form, but it's das. So if you don't have kavana for the mitzvah, you did nothing. You didn't do anything.
I thought for Shema and Birchas Hamazon, if you say Lashon HaKodesh, even if you don't understand the words, then
that's something else. That's a different issue. Not whether you had kavana to be yotzei the mitzvah. That's a different issue. All right, let me not confuse everyone. Baruch, it's a good question. I want to deal with it. I don't want to ignore it. But so let's circle it. Maybe we'll get back to it next time. But let's circle it. So let's recap really quickly. Again, what Rav Chaim teaches us are two types of kavana. There's misasek, meaning two types of kavana that are bad, meaning that in this category that apostles every word of Shemona Esrei and makes it like you didn't say it. There's misasek and mitzvah kavana. Each of these, whether it's misasek or mitzvah kavana, is ma'akiv in the entire tefillah, just like in all the mitzvahs. And basically, if you want to know how Rav Chaim sets up the Sugyah l'maskana, he basically sets it up very clearly as follows. Let me go back to the slide, if I can find it. 1 second. Let me find it. Give me a moment, please. Yeah, here we go. Again, the Rambam in Perek Daled, when he said any tefillah without kavanah is not a tefillah, that's because he's talking about this kind of thing. You didn't see yourself standing in front of God. And that has two problems in it. And number one, it's not a ma'aseh tefillah, because the definition of tefillah is communicating with God. So you're not communicating with God. Number two, mitzvahs require kavanah. And if you're spaced out, you're not doing it for the purpose of kasher tziva Hashem. And that's why in Perek Dalet, any part that's done without seeing yourself talking to God is like you didn't say the words. But when we're talking about Perek Yud, where as long as you're mechavein in the avos, meaning the only thing you really have to have kavanah for is the avos, this means perish milim. Are you paying attention to what the words mean? And that's a din only in Perek Yud. But the assumption is the rest of the Shemona Esrei, you knew you were talking to God, but you weren't paying attention. You didn't know what the words meant, let's say. So far, so bad?
Rebbe just mentioned the Beis
depressing.
Yosef. Is Rebbe saying that the Beis Yosef would disagree with this method?
The Beis Yosef disagrees with almost every word that Rav Chaim said except for one, and that is that if mitzvahs shrichas kavana, I mean, even if mitzvahs don't need kavana, Amira requires kavana. But one second, I got to do my public service now.
Okay.
Warning. This does not represent normative Judaism. We don't paskin in this way. We don't, not within 100 miles of this. La halacha l'maisa, as long as you have kavana in avos, you walk yourself into Gan Eden, you're yotzei Shmon Esrei, nothing to talk about. If you don't have kavana in avos, I don't know, that you got problems. That's another issue.
Rebbe, I was just saying that according to Beis Yosef, it sounds like he's saying that regardless of whether mitzvahs tzrichos kavana or not, you still need kavana by Amira. Whereas it sounds like Reb Chaim is
Yotzei.
what?
To be yotzei, you need kavana to be yotzei, says the Beis Yosef. You know, it's
Right. So, but it sounds like Reb Chaim is saying that no, it's dafka by it's only. I mean, there's other reasons, but it's his second svara is only where you would hold mitzvah tzrichos kavana. It sounds like he's saying that there's only a mitzvah, there's only a chiyuv of having kavana in davening where mitzvahs tzrichos kavana. If mitzvahs wasn't tzrichos kavana, he wouldn't bring that as a raya.
could be he didn't want to get involved in it is a machlokas. What the Beis Yosef says is a chiddush, and it's a machlokas whether it's true or not. So it could be he wanted to avoid that because anyway we hold mitzvah tzrichos kavana, and therefore he avoided the whole fray. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. All right. So cause I kind of know what I'm talking about also. So it's very good. Gentlemen, what I'm saying to you is the Beis Yosef would not agree to one word that Rav Chaim would say. What the Beis Yosef was talking about was one thing and one thing only. And before let's say mitzvahs don't require kavana. And before I bench, I have to say I'm going to fulfill the mitzvah of benching. Because if I don't think that thought in my brain, then even if mitzvahs ain't a sricha kavana, you won't be yotze benching. But from the minute I say Baruch Hashem, I can be spaced out. The Beis Yosef does not say you need kavana in benching. By the way, according to Rav Chaim, in benching also, if I space out at any point, I'm not yotze benching. The whole mitzvah needs kavana. Any part of mitzvah that I said without kavana is like I didn't say it. So benching, shema, anything where I space out at any point, it's like I didn't say it.
What if you're singing the tune correctly?
But if you're singing the tune correctly, but your brain ain't there.
That's the problem with a lot of people who sing benching. They sing benching, they're not thinking about the words, they're just singing the tune. They're thinking about the song, they're not thinking about the words. It's a problem.
So again, according to the Beis Yosef, and this is true lalach also, before you bench, you have to have in mind, you're doing the mitzvah. Now, Elna to mention the Chaya Adam, that's important to know. And the Chaya Adam says that any time where the context implies that you're being yotze in a mitzvah, that is the kavanah for you. For instance, after I eat, they say, I pick up a bench at a bench. What do you think I'm doing? And maybe I'm doing reading practice. Maybe I'm teaching my kids how to. The context creates the kavanah. The context is the kavanah. That Chai Adam saves our lives, because that Chai Adam explains how, even though many times I don't say I'm thinking I'm fulfilling the mitzvah, as long as the context, implies that I'm doing it, that's good enough. That's considered kavanah.
For things like chesed as well. Meaning when somebody does chesed, they're not necessarily think every time I'm doing this because Hashem commanded me to do chesed. They're thinking do chesed to be a nice person. I'm trying to be nice. I try to be care. Try to be. You have the heart for other people. You're trying to take care of them. Like is that also a question? Would the context help you there? I mean, obviously, you stop and you ask the guy. He goes, "Well, why are you doing tzedakah?" It's because Hashem told me to. But I'm not thinking at the moment I'm giving tzedakah, well, I'm giving this money because Hashem told me I have a mitzvah to give tzedakah, blah, 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 etc.
Sure.
I think because like Chesed, hopefully that's one of the things which we're hopefully doing the mitzvah, like, we may not be davening like the Zayd is davening, but Amal will do a Chesed for someone. We give some hearts, you give some tzedakah, you give,
Why are you doing it? You're doing because that's a mitzvah. That means God's
told you. But Lamaisa, the Chavos says one of the kavanas is Adam Asher La'ani or
that's not the mitzvah shrichas kavana means why are you doing this? Because God the mitzvah. That's good enough. That's because it's Tziv Hashem. That's exactly kavana. When we talk about mitzvah without kavana, it means I didn't like. I'll give you a good example.
Masasik, that means masasik.
Well, not even masasik, but let's say I'm not paying attention to a word in davening, And I paid attention to the first bracha in the first pasuk in Shema, the Kabbalah Mocha Shema, but then on I spaced out in the first. But I didn't. Well, here's a good example. I didn't even realize that there's a mitzvah of Zecher Yitzias Mitzrayim. But I said, but I didn't have in mind. I didn't even know there was a mitzvah. Chai Adam says, don't worry about it. The context. Chazal set up 5 mitzvahs in the chakras, right? Tefillin, Shema, Tefillin, Tzitzit, Shema, Tefillah, and Yitzias Mitzrayim. Even if you don't have in mind each one of those, what are you doing? The guy's in shul. He's doing.
You're doing the formula. You're fitting the formula. You're fitting the formula.
He says also, you sit down to matzah at the seder. Even if you don't think I'm doing the mitzvah of matzah the way Hashem says, the erev tochlu matzahs. What are you doing? You're at the seder. You're eating matzah for the mitzvah. That's what you're doing. He says by kiddush, and you hold up the coast Friday night. What do you think you're doing? Even if you don't think it out, the context is the kavanah. So that Chai Adam saves us. Now, whether it works in all cases, I don't know. Chesed, I don't know. Maybe again, his point is that you don't have to think out the words. This is a mitzvah kashetziv Hashem. As long as you, what's he doing? He's doing the mitzvah. That's good enough. That's the kavanah. Now the Mishmur warns us. He says, of course, that's only like a b'di eved. You should, in fact, have in mind. I'm doing this l'shem kashetziv Hashem. But b'di eved, the Chai Adam works, and again, it saves our lives on a daily basis.
Yeah, because Rosh Hashanah was pretty depressing up to that point.
But again, this do not represent normative Judaism. All right, let's stop here, and believe that Thursday night we will continue, Mr. Shem.
Lamaisa on this, it sounds a lot like Navardic approach. Like Navardic said, "Ich bin a garnish." But even in Navardic, they say the guy came into Navardic the first day of Yeshiva, and he sees everyone saying "Ich bin a garnish, ich bin a garnish." So he goes "Ich bin a garnish," and the guy goes to his friend and says, "Look, that guy, first day here, and he already thinks he's a garnish."
I hear. You read this Rav Chaim, you could be a garnish the first day. All right, but it's not. We're going to say it's not pshat. All right, gentlemen. Okay, Thursday night, Mr. Shem. I will see you then. Okay, shkayach.